Welcome to Equilibrium Echoes, the podcast where we delve into the transformative power of your inner world on your relationships. I'm your host, Alyssa Decker. Join me as we unlock the secrets of emotional equilibrium and dig deep into the tools and insights needed to foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships in ways that feel safe and authentic. Welcome back to another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. I am your host, Alyssa Decker, and today I'm back for part 2 of the preview of my new book. It's coming out in just a couple of weeks. It's called Relationships Are Hard and Other Lies I Believed. And the previews and the editorial feedback that I have been getting has been so touching. Like, I spoke with a woman today who listened to last week's podcast and sent it to her friends. And I'll tell you what, that really means a lot to me, and it really touches my heart, because when I wrote this book, what I really wanted to do was share my story in a way that would help you not feel alone, and that would give you some really useful strategies to help you feel better and safer in your relationship, no matter what it looks like and no matter what level of participation the other person is willing to have in fixing the relationship. And so, just to clarify again, when I say relationships are hard, I am not just talking about intimate partners or spouses. I am also talking about parents and bosses and coworkers and clients or employees, like anyone that you have to interact with on a regular basis. That is really a challenge. You know, we have this idea that people and relationships are just hard. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that there is hard work to be done, but a healthy relationship is going to reach a place of safety and well-being where it's no longer hard all the time. If it's hard all the time and it constantly feels like you're climbing the side of a mountain and sliding backward and skinning your knees and not making any real progress, that is not healthy and it is not normal, and you do not have to put up with that. You do not have to live with that day in and day out. And I thought for a long time, for many, many years, that was just my lot in life. Like, I had chosen to marry this person, and so therefore I was required to stay, and for it to just be hard forever. And I want you to know, whether you stay or whether you go, it should not always be that kind of uphill slogging through the mud. Every single day is painful and hard. If that's the case, then we need to fix it. Your relationship needs to change. And sometimes that will mean that you have to walk away from something or leave someone or change your physical proximity to a person or your access that you give to that person. And sometimes it will mean that you have to work on yourself and change the way that you show up in the relationship, and then watch that have ripple effects and really change the dynamic within your relationship. I also am a very firm believer that it is possible to be in a really high conflict relationship and not let it trigger you to stay calm and have peace regardless of the other person's reactions. And this can be especially helpful when it is a spouse or a parent and you don't want to walk away from the relationship, but you cannot keep going the way you've been going, right? I know there are some of you who are very much relating to what I am saying. And so when I wrote the book, the title, Relationships Are Hard and Other Lies I Believed, the title came from this idea that I had. I don't know exactly where it came from. It was an idea that I grew up with, that I carried into my marriage and really into all of my relationships, where I just believed that people were hard and communication was hard and relationships were hard and marriage was just destined to be hard. And so as I was in this relationship for 19 years and things were incredibly painful or such a struggle where I felt like I was pouring heart and soul and everything I had into trying to fix it or make it better, and was just like never getting anywhere, never seeing any results. I would tell myself, okay, Alyssa, marriage is just hard, and this is just how it is, and this is just our hard. Like, something would happen that was very hurtful to me, or be said that was very hurtful to me, and I would think, okay, all right, Alyssa, you knew this. You knew marriage is hard. This is just your hard. And what happened is it created this dynamic where I never said no, and I never stood up for myself, and I never defended boundaries, because I didn't believe I had the right to, and I believed that the hard was just normal, and I just needed to accept it, and that I didn't have the right. I almost felt like I didn't have the right to an expectation of it being less hard. And as I started to heal and to do the work on myself and to prepare to get out of the relationship, what I realized was that it's not really supposed to be that way. A healthy relationship will have hard moments. A healthy relationship will take hard work. It will require hard work. I am not saying, oh, the healthy relationships are just easy, but a healthy relationship will not be all the time hard. A healthy relationship will look like we have a conflict and we have to work through this, and it sucks and it hurts, and we both said things we regret. But once it's solved, we can move on. We can repair the relationship. We're closer. We're stronger together now. And it's pretty fun for a while. Like, we're enjoying each other's company for a while. There's some really good days or weeks or months. I feel safe with this person. Like, I was listening to one of my favorite people to listen to, Dr. John Deloney. He has a brilliant podcast called The Dr. John Deloney Show. And he talks to people all the time about what their current problem is in life. And he describes marriage there's a way that he describes marriage, a scene, I guess, where he talks about when you come home and you see your spouse there in your home, or your spouse comes home and you are the one home, whatever that looks like. And as soon as they walk in the room, your body exhales and your shoulders drop and you relax. And it suddenly feels like this breath of fresh air, this safe space. And it's just like, And when I hear him describe that, first of all, I think, yeah, that never happened in my relationship, like not even for a day. Like, I never once remember feeling like that. But I also think to myself, or let me back up. When I first heard that, my initial thought was, what are you talking about? It's not like that. How could it be like that? What is it? Like, what? Really? Like, that exists? And then I started realizing, like, oh, okay, this actually does exist, right? And this is what a healthy relationship looks like. And if I ever date someone again, this is what it's going to have to feel like. But I have now, in the work that I've done on myself and in the work that I have done on my relationships, I have now started to expect that feeling from those that I let into my inner circle. So, when it comes to relationships and boundaries, when I say inner circle, I'm talking about the 8 or 10 or 12 people who are the closest to you, the people that you share life with on a daily basis, the people that know your heart, the people that you call when you're frustrated and in tears, the people that really get to see you and your heart. And this does not need to be, and it should not be, a very large circle, okay? 5, 10, 8, 12 people, a couple of great friends, some of your immediate family, whatever that looks like for you. But this is your inner circle. These are the people with whom you are vulnerable. These are the people that you give the right to speak into your life, to point out things that they see, that they feel like you need to be aware of, that maybe you need to work on. But there's a high level of trust and a vulnerability with these relationships. And then if we think about this like rings of a target or a bullseye, then the next ring would be your the people that you interact with pretty regularly, but they don't get that level of access to you. They don't get access to your heart. They don't get to see your most vulnerable emotions. And this could be your coworkers or your extended family, or, people that you interact with all the time. You know their name, they know yours. You exchange more than just pleasantries. There's a relationship, but they are not the inner circle. And these people do not get a vote. They do not get a vote in how you run your life and the decisions that you make, and where you live or what you eat or what you wear or whatever. They don't get a vote. They're not in the inner circle, but they are people that you care about, that you interact with a lot. And then we have the outer circle, which are people that we have intentionally created some distance from, or that we just don't know well at all. Okay? So when I say inner circle, that's kind of to define that's kind of what I'm talking about. So when it comes to relationships and boundaries, we have this very small inner circle. And within that inner circle, the boundaries can be much looser, much wider. Like, these are the people that get the most access. We don't enforce the same boundary that we might with someone who is in those outer rings of the circle, so to speak. So the inner circle would be the people that I will actually answer the phone for if it rings at 2 a.m. These are the people that if they are in the emergency room, I'm in the emergency room with them. These are the people that if they have an emergency and they need to drop their kids off, my door is always open, even if it's 3 a.m. and their kid is puking. Okay, these are my people. So when you're in a relationship with a parent or an intimate partner and they're in that inner circle, it will be hard and it will be challenging at times, but it's not supposed to be always hard. And so listening to John Deloney, I'm trying to come full circle here with my train of thought for you. Listening to John Deloney describe a relationship that way, I have now become more intentional in requiring everyone inside my inner circle to be a person that brings with them that feeling of safety and calm and relaxation, where when they are in the same room with me, I feel better than I do when I'm alone. I feel calmer. I have a greater sense of peace. My body relaxes. So as you start to do this work, where you are becoming aware of what your body is telling you, and you are healing emotionally, and you're growing in emotional maturity, you will start to notice how your body reacts when you walk into a room or a space with another person. And it's really fascinating. There's been some really fascinating studies and research done on your nervous system. But your nervous system, your limbic system, is designed to alert you to a danger almost immediately. It does it much faster than your conscious brain can decode. So this would be kind of that sense, like if you're out walking at night and your quote unquote spidey senses tingle and you feel like there's somebody watching you. That could be your nervous system alerting you that there actually is someone watching you, even though your conscious mind is not actually aware of a person with their eyes on you. Does that make sense? And so when we walk into a room of people, our bodies will react almost immediately. It's fascinating how instantaneous this is, but our bodies and our nervous systems will respond to the people in the room. So when I walk into a room at a party or a kid event or whatever, and I can feel my body tense up and my shoulders go up, and for me, I feel it in my chest where there's a tightening feeling, that alerts me, now that I'm aware of this, it alerts me to the fact that there's someone in the room who is not emotionally safe. It's not safe for my body to be around. That does not mean that I always do something about it, right? If I take my kids to their karate lesson and I get that feeling, I might keep a closer eye on my kid, but that doesn't mean we have to pack up and leave. It just means that my body is telling me something in this situation is potentially unsafe, and so I pay a little more close attention. But it works in reverse too. When I meet someone new, or I'm developing a friendship with someone and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to allow them into my inner circle, I will pay attention, very close attention to the way that my body responds when they are in the room with me. This is why one of the reasons why online relationships can be so tough, because your nervous system can't get the same reading from someone when you're not in the same actual physical room with them. Okay, so relationships are hard in the sense that they require work. Sometimes they require very hard work. You have to be very intentional about maintaining them, and they will have hard seasons. But a healthy relationship is not hard all the time. In fact, it's rewarding and delightful and peaceful and encouraging the majority of the time. And that is one of the big differences between an unhealthy or abusive relationship and a healthy one, is that percentage, right? John and Julie Gottman say in their research through the Gottman Institute that for a relationship to be healthy, the positive interactions need to outweigh the negatives by 3-1, I believe, or 7 out of 10 need to be positive in order for the positive to continue to outweigh the negative. And so in a healthy relationship, there will be times, many times, of safety and security and peace and joy. And so, when women come to me for coaching and they say to me, like, tell me what the state of my relationship is, I don't tell them what the state of their relationship is. I ask them, how do you feel? How much time are you spending fighting? Do you feel safe? Like, we start to ask diagnostic questions to help them figure out for themselves where their relationship falls on the spectrum of health and safety. And once we know that, then we can begin to work more towards health and safety, starting with their own internal work so that they feel safe and secure in their own bodies, they have their own back, and they start to show up in the relationship in a different way that makes them feel really empowered and safe and strong in that relationship. And then eventually they have to make a decision about whether they're going to stay or whether they're going to go. But that isn't the biggest, that's not where we start. That's not the biggest factor when it comes to, can this relationship be saved? Like, many times we want to jump ahead to, like, well, should I just up and leave? And the answer is you maybe should leave at some point, depending on the dynamics of your relationship and where it goes. But there are so many things that can be done before you even get to the place where you have to make that decision. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Okay, so I want to read another excerpt from my book. And by the way, if you would like to claim your free copy, when the book launches, it'll be available for free for just a couple of days, the ebook version. You can go to coachingwithalyssa.com/wait-list, and you can get on the list to get your free copy and be notified by email when it releases. I expect to have a release date here within just a couple of days. That's my fault. It's me. I'm the problem. I'm working on some final editing and formatting, and once I have that done and sent off, I will have a date, but it's coming very soon. So anyway, I want to read for you chapter 6 of my book, which is line number 1, relationships are hard. And the first 5 chapters of my book, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, the first 5 chapters are my story, and I'm kind of giving you the background for how I learned all the things that I have learned, and what I went through to get there. And then in chapter 6, I begin to go through 7 lies that I believed that dramatically affected my relationship. And the first one is in chapter 6, relationships are hard. So I want to read through this chapter and invite you to the waitlist. All right, so let's jump right in. I grew up hearing that marriage is hard. From radio programs to sermons to conversations at home, it was constantly communicated to me that marriage is hard work and all marriages have problems. I understand there is some truth behind this statement. Marriages, like all relationships, take work. There are communication challenges and differences of opinion in every relationship that require attention and effort to resolve. Sacrifice and compromise are often the keys to success. Yet what I have learned over the past few years is that there is a substantial difference between a marriage of 2 emotionally healthy people who choose to honor and care for each other while working out their differences and a marriage that causes harm. Pain happens in every relationship. We hurt each other. That is a truth that will remain true as long as we are human. In a solid, healthy relationship where there is conflict and people say regrettable things, those heated moments are then followed by repair. Repair can take on a variety of forms, and it looks different from one relationship to another. In all cases, there are apologies and calmer conversation and a willingness to hear each other's perspectives once the heat of the argument has passed. There is usually some level of physical connection involved, perhaps in the form of a hug or cuddles or makeup sex. But when there is no repair, then that repair is slow to heal. It begins to fester like a wound left untreated. Couples may wake up the next morning, kiss each other goodbye, and head off to work, simply trying to return to normal. The problem is that over time, this unacknowledged pain does not heal, it accumulates. And this is when pain often reaches the threshold of harm. Unfortunately, if you are like me and you internalize this message that marriage or relationships are just plain hard, this can create a situation where you feel that you have no other choice than to tough it out. It can lead to a feeling that there is nothing that will make the relationship less painful because it's destined to stay this way. In the early days of my marriage, I often struggled with a sense that something was wrong. Like, really wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it though, and I always ended up thinking that what I was feeling must just be the hard I had always heard about. This belief led me to dismiss things that should have been huge warning signs that we needed help. It led me to ignore my body's signals that I wasn't safe. It led me to shove my feelings deeper after every argument or lecture. It caused me to accept my husband's justifications and excuses. Even worse, because I believed marriage was destined to be hard, I completely believed Martin when he would use that very argument against me. When he told me that I was simply going to have to do things I didn't want to do, like have sex on command, I convinced myself that he was right, because marriage is just hard. In recent years, however, I have had opportunities to hear from couples in healthy, thriving relationships, and they all say the same thing. Marriage isn't hard. It takes some work, but it is generally the most delightful and energizing experience of their lives. They are deeply content and feel a great deal of peace when they are near the other person. Things may get rough for a season, but they keep coming back together, renewing their commitment to be part of the same team. That kind of marriage is not hard. It simply requires effort. Sometimes it takes a lot of effort, but that effort pays dividends and it doesn't feel hopeless. It doesn't destroy you from the inside out, but rather it shapes you and pushes you into learning and maturity and personal growth. At one point late in my marriage, our family was living in a beautiful home. It was perfect for us. It was the first home I had ever decorated to my preferences. It had an amazing kitchen, great entertaining spaces, and a pool in the generous backyard. Having lived in 27 houses in my lifetime, I can honestly say it was my favorite. However, after 3 years of living there, I was frantic for some way to make life better. I had tried so many things over the years in an attempt to soothe Martin and keep things peaceful. By this point, I had given up on feeling loved or cherished. I simply dreamed of not hurting all the time. I realized there was one thing I had not tried. Since we had been married, Martin had a variety of garages and workshop areas within them, but he had never had a dedicated space for his tools and projects. Now I knew I was grasping at straws. However, Martin had frequently complained that since selling our home to move to overseas, that he felt he did not have a space of his own. He would frequently remark that everyone in our family seemed to have a place. The kids had their own rooms, I had my office and art studio, and he made it abundantly clear that he resented paying for a house that didn't give him a place to call his own. And so I decided to sell the home I loved to find that for him. Even in that moment, I knew there was little chance of that working, but I was desperate. At this point in our relationship, we had been married 16 years, and I had just delivered baby number 5. She was a very high-needs baby who screamed all day long for months on end, and she would only allow me to hold her. No one else. Unable to cope with my lack of availability, Martin had been talking about driving his car off a bridge when I said no to sex. I would watch as Martin arrived home from work to a disheveled, teary wife who was so exhausted she could barely stand, only to see him walk inside, spend 30 minutes in the bathroom, then fall asleep on the couch. I cooked many dinners with one arm holding a baby, frantically shushing her so she wouldn't wake him, and then serving my family dinner while I continued to bounce the baby and try to get a few bites in. Sometimes I was so exhausted that the room would start spinning and I'd work hard to keep from dropping the baby. Martin would wake up from his nap when dinner was ready, always remarking about how tired he was because the baby slept in our bed. I knew he wanted her out, but sleeping with her beside me was the only way I could get any sleep at all. And, if I'm being honest, it kept my husband's hands to himself when the baby was attached to my breast. So when the idea came to sell the house and find him his beloved workshop, it was born out of a desperate need for a solution to my marriage that wasn't simply more sex. I convinced myself it could work. Maybe. So that spring we began touring homes. We found several homes that I liked, but Martin always found something to not like. He eventually found a house online that was listed as for sale by owner, and it seemed to check all his boxes. There was acreage, but most importantly, a separate shop building. We went to see the property on a rainy afternoon. I was disappointed with how small the house was, but the shop building made my husband's eyes light up. He was in love from the moment he first laid eyes on it. Seeing my underwhelmed reaction, he promised a kitchen remodel and an extension to the house in the first year. So I agreed to make an offer on the property, knowing it was pointless to resist. But within a week, I started having nightmares about that house. I could not find any sense of peace about living there, and I felt panicky at the very idea. I struggled to tell Martin about it, and I finally did. His response was to tell me that we had made an offer, and that was it. Decision made. I told him a dozen times over the next few weeks, in every way I could think of, that I did not want to buy that house, and his answer was always the same. So I swallowed my feelings and told myself that marriage was just hard, and this was part of the hard. It was hard to compromise, hard when we can't have what we want. But the truth was, these were just surface justifications. They were a way to make myself feel better. The real truth was that my husband was ignoring my emotions and my pleadings. He was ignoring my feelings of panic and fear. He was trampling on me to move forward and get what he wanted. That isn't hard. That goes far beyond a struggle to learn how to effectively communicate. That is destructive, unhealthy behavior. So how do you know if it's just challenging communication stuff or something more? Well, it comes down to two things: mutual respect and participation, and repairing after a conflict. Here are some questions to ask yourself if you're trying to understand what is happening in your relationship. Are both of you coming together with the intention and desire to resolve conflicts in a mutually beneficial way? Or does it always seem to fall to the same person to make the changes and sacrifice for the greater good? After a fight, do you both find ways to come back together and repair the relationship? Or is one person consistently happy while the other one cleans up the pieces alone? In a healthy relationship, there will be conflict, and it might not be handled in a healthy way every time, but there should be an overall feeling of trust and safety and a mutual effort put into making the relationship work. Marriage isn't hard if both people hear and respect the other. Marriage will always have challenges, but when two people respond to each other the majority of the time with compassion and care and concern for each other, it's not hard. It's safe, delightful, and rewarding, with a few challenges thrown in. The same can be said for any healthy relationship, from a friendship to a parent. If your relationships are hard all the time, then it's time to get some help and figure out why. Find a trusted counselor or a therapist and get some objective feedback that will give you strategies for moving forward, whatever that may look like. The goal is not to simply tough it out. There is so much more, and that is what I wish for your relationship. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. Join the waitlist to get your free copy of my book, Relationships Are Hard and Other Lies I Believed, coming at the end of October by going to coachingwithalyssa.com/book-wait. Thanks for joining me for another episode of Equilibrium Echoes. If you would like to learn more about the podcast, visit www.coachingwithalyssa.com/podcast. And while you're there, book your free consultation and download the preview of my new book, Marriage is Hard and Other Lies I Believed. I'll see you in the next episode.